my biggest fear with this build. It is the scariest thing. I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me. Hey everyone, it's BoxBox here. Now, we all know TFT is a game of adapting to the meta and finding the strongest S tier builds to carry you to a first place. But what happens when the S tier build you're going for is contested by literally everyone and you just can't hit? With the TFT Gizmos and Gadgets Championship coming up right around the corner, I'm going to showcase some hush-hush, secret, dark tech builds that might get you out of a tough spot. I promise you, they'll create some of the most interesting games in TFT World Championship history. So sit back and follow along, because these are my super top secret builds for the Gizmos and Gadgets World Championship. If Caitlyn 2 can already carry you to a win streak, imagine what Caitlyn 3 can do. With High Roller, which gives you 3 loaded dice and 8 gold, you are guaranteed a Caitlyn 3. So here's the main trick. Caitlyn is one of the few champions in the game that has this property where if you loaded dice her at level 2, you are guaranteed to get only Caitlyns. Before the round ends, you need to load a dice Caitlyn twice and buy everything. Because once you hit level 3, you'll start getting 2 costs, which means you are not guaranteed to get 5 Caitlyns anymore. Your ideal endgame is going to just be 2 snipers with clockwork. That's Caitlyn and Jhin. Throw in the Orianna for some support, and then you just throw in 6 bruisers. They just have infinite HP. Your Caitlyn items are going to be very simple. It's always a Shojin, Gwynsus if you have it, QSS if you have it. I actually don't like QSS myself. I would rather have a Trap Claw on her support. Her support can be Ashe, an Orianna, a Jhin, just someone to stand next to her to kind of protect her. For 3-star Shojin Caitlyn, my top 3 augments, obviously High Roller, otherwise you can't even get the Caitlyn in the first place. Sniper's Nest is great to give her scaling into the late game to make sure she absolutely one-shots everything. Featherweights is great to make sure she casts faster. Allows you to go even longer without having to roll, so you can cap out your late game board even harder. And a surprising one here, but actually Binary Airdrop works very well on units like Caitlyn who don't really have a preferred third item. You can just slam a Shojin, maybe a Gwynsus, and just leave the third item up to chance. And then just go ahead and itemize everybody else. Binary gives a lot of value. It is one of the highest value augments in the game if you can play around it. Something important to note about this build is that Caitlyn does fall off. Caitlyn instantly deletes one target away from the game, and she will do it every couple seconds with a Shojin. But as players get more and more units on the board, this becomes less and less effective. Eventually, you're going to have to build a real board. The main purpose of this build is to cheese out a 10 win streak, get a 30, 40 gold lead on all of your opponents, have a bunch of HP, and easily coast into a top 4. Going off the back of 3-star Caitlyn, we have, you guessed it, 3-star Alawi. Alright, take High Roller, use 2 loaded dice on her at 2-1, and get an instant 3-star. Save the rest to develop your front line, and enjoy your freest 10 win streak, and pivot to whatever you want late game. The best item you can slam on this Alawi is Sunfire Cape. Sunfire Cape has seen increasing value as the game has started slowing down. All the champions have had their attack damages lowered. Fights on average last longer, which means time-based items like Sunfire are very valued. Otherwise, I would look for items like Gargoyle Stoneplate, Redemption. For 3-star Alawi, my top 3 augments are obviously High Roller, so you can hit the Alawi at all. And then after that, augments that just synergize with Alawi, her big HP bar, and her Bruiser status. Bruiser Heart, Shrug It Off, or even Titanic Force, if you happen to hit it, gives her a lot of free damage. For backlines, 2-star Caitlyn is my favorite. Doesn't even need any items. Totally fine. I highly recommend you do not play a frontline carry. Don't play Warwick. Don't play Tryndamere. You need to make sure Alawi can take all the damage and heal everything back up with a well-targeted ult. This is another one of those comps where you can just save so much HP in the early game. You can probably get a free 4th to 2nd place by just existing, killing off a few units every round, and then coasting your way. Enough about early games. This next build goes all the way to the end game. Kaisa is a unit that kills everything on the entire board given the right circumstances, but she's just not been a good unit recently. But with the game slowed down, all the other carries have their damage nerfed. It is a perfect window for Kaisa to come in and do what she does best once again. So items you're going to look for on your Kaisa are Morelos, QSS, Gunblade, Gwynsus, Hodge, really lifesteal and deal one-shot amounts of damage. Take whatever augment streaks you the hardest. Even if it doesn't make your Kaisa board very strong late game, the fact that you even have HP and money to attempt to build this Kaisa board means you're already winning. On the way to Kaisa, I strongly recommend you just play Malzahar. You can put almost the exact same items on him. The only thing that matters is buying time. So look for those bodyguards, even bruisers if you have to. Look for those support synergies like Clockwork, Enchanter, and just make sure that she lives. If you feel like the mutant sucks for Kaisa, don't worry about mutant at all. Just drop the mutants and just play even more frontline. A lot of games you can't just bank on hitting a legendary, but Kaisa is a very surprisingly uncontested unit. You will hit her at level 8 a lot more often than you think because nobody's going to grab her. That's probably enough about a super late game, perfect legendary comp. How about we talk about a comp that starts all the way from the very first augment? In set 6, Jinx and Vi were sisters and they worked incredibly well together. And in set 6.5, something happened between the two sisters and now they hate each other. They will never be on the same team, except for with Built Different. Built Different 1, 2, and 3 gives a very large amount of attack speed and a very large amount of health, making certain carries pop off ridiculously hard. Built Different is the one time where you can take the two sisters together, they will have two rivals and they will cancel each other out and they will both get the benefit of Built Different. Items to look for on Jinx, there's so many. Giant Slayer, Infinity Edge, Runon's Hurricane, Last Whisper, Hodge, Gwynsu's, Edge of Night. But if I had to choose, I would go for Edge of Night, Hodge, and Giant Slayer. A little bit of healing, the Edge of Night to drop aggro, and one item to make sure she can actually kill people. For augments, look for whatever scales your Jinx the hardest. Disintegrate, which gives magic damage. Look for Knife's Edge, Battle Mage, look for Backfoot, anything that scales your carries. Most of your resources is going to be in the tank department, so make sure you have something in your augments and items for Jinx to still kill the entire board. There is absolutely no set build. There are certain units that are good, and here's what you should look out for. Every single 2-star unit, as long as they're benefiting from Built Different, is quite strong. Look for units that you would normally want to stack attack speed on. That means Warwick, that means Talon, that means Caitlyn, and then grab any frontline you want, and a lot of units work surprisingly well just on their own as a standalone unit. Late game, you can start synergizing. My favorite variation of this is 3 Socialites. And just like in Arcane, Jinx's best friend is actually just 1 Silco. Put Jinx in front of the Silco. Silco will speed up Jinx's cast, help her go in early, get that prop off. With a well-timed Silco ult on Jinx, she will kill everything in 6 seconds. That's all I had for this comp. Now, let's move on to the next one. For the final build that we have today, I'm going to present to you guys the funniest, but surprisingly viable and often first placeable build I've seen in my entire life. Let me introduce to you guys Laser Frog. Yes, I know he's technically a catfish, but Laser Frog sounds so much cooler. All it requires is a Tahm Kench with a rapid fire cannon. Now you might be thinking, BoxBox, are you trolling? You're gonna put an RFC on your tank? And the answer is, he's not a tank. He is a ranged carry. Tahm Kench is an infinitely scaling unit where as long as you get him early, he scales infinitely hard. Just like all the other builds. You just build any decent frontline, any decent support units, and watch the Kench print money. Infinite items. Your entire board is going to be itemized. For Laser Frog, my top few augments are Rich Get Richer to help you get there to the late game. This lets you sack the early game, get a lot of money, get carousel priority, maybe get a free Kench on the carousel, and otherwise just hit level 8 with a lot of gold to roll. Mercenary Heart is great. You can just run Mercs, Lose Streak, Cash Out, Scrap Heart or Cybernetic, anything that scales with the amount of items that you have. Absolutely do not take Meditation or Makeshift Armor. Those are terrible. Those will have no value in your comp. A good way to get to this board safely is to play a 2-star Talon. Talon is my absolute favorite early game unit. Why? He's the best user of an RFC early game. Play whatever it takes to get to the late game with enough HP that you can start donkey rolling it down for Kench. It is worth noting that Kench cannot kill the entire board on his own. He is simply an outlet for you to print items and make the rest of your team stronger. So what do you play with him? The answer is anything. In TFT, 5-cost units, legendary units, they are so strong that even if you play them with no synergies, if you have 3 decent items on them, they will pop off. I highly recommend you always feed him AP until you start to feel like he's already one-shotting everything. My biggest fear with this build, Silco, Galio, Alistar. Units that Tahm Kench cannot eat. It is the scariest thing. I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me. Look for a squishy unit with items that you can one-shot, or if you have a lot of AP, go ahead and grab anything. A very funny variation of this build. If you can't get an RFC for Laser Frog, you can do Assassin Frog. Assassin Spat on Kench, just like how I told you about the tanks. You can aim it at their carry, he'll instantly eat them, they're just dead. If you build this correctly, you will literally fill up your entire board full of items. Everyone's gonna have 3 items. You're gonna have items on your bench because you just don't know what to do with it. Slam just whatever, and just make sure you stay alive to reach that tipping point where Tahm Kench can infinitely scale. And that's all for my secret builds ahead of the TFT Gizmos and Gadgets World Championship. Let me know what you think. Do you have a build that you have that gets you out of a tough spot? Don't forget to tune in on April 29th to May 1st as 32 of the world's best tacticians duke it out for the ultimate title. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.